Oh, well, all right. There it is, folks. The next page. What's going on? I have been doing a lot of work. I'm tired, to be honest. All this drawing is. I remember being able to do hours and hours at the table, and not as what's the word? Uh, when you practice some kind of sports for a really long time, and you're like trained and ready to roll, whatever that is. Stamina, something. Don't have as much stamina, but it'll come back. Hello to Splatter Cat and Great White Ape and Mr. Craig. I did reply to your email. Not going to stay long. My head hurts so much. Yikes. Wow. I hope you feel better, buddy. I don't know what's wrong, but it's not good. Um, yeah, so here we are again. No music today. My computer's recharging right now. Is the audio any better? Is it less crunchy? I do have a fan on in the background. Might be causing some audio garbly-gook. All right. It's a bit more muffled. Tell you what, maybe I can't do that. I'm trying to tell you what. I'm gonna move so that I'm literally pretty much directly, like a few inches from my phone right now. So that ought to help. I think the reality of the matter is I need a new phone. This really old phone. I'm the guy that's like, oh, that they're tracking me on my phone, and I don't want to, update it or anything and get, whatever, get it. All right. Let me read this here. I did see the reply. I don't really know what you'd want to propose since I don't know. All right. Well, I'll get back into that and give a more detailed answer, I think. Okay. But I like what you're doing. I'll say it's pretty awesome. Um, the other thing too is when I did reply, I was like at work and had my hands full. It's a bit of a stressful day at work today. I have a kind of a what do you call, like, passive aggressive client that I have to kind of mentally prepare to talk to this woman. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of woman. Um, and I find a lot of times when you get people who are overly like, oh, I love what you're doing, and it's, oh my God, and oh, you're so great, and blah, 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 blah. Like, they're the ones that are the easiest to disappoint. And in the end, maybe are the ones that you want to watch out for. You know what I'm saying? Um, I think doing business with not all women, but maybe women in general, and definitely this kind of woman, is really, really about making her feel a certain way. You know what I mean? Um, it's about the feelings, that bullshit. And there's certain devices that you have to use. You have to be able to deflect. You have to be very calm. When she's being a bitch and just stuff like this. And don't escalate. Like the whole thing is to like de-escalate. You know what I'm saying? Um, and kind of show maybe even abstractify the situation to the extent where it's like it's not so much me or you or somebody's fault, but that the conditions of the situation were not the best and had an impact on the problem, that kind of shit. um I'm really good at that kind of stuff, and I'm not. Hold on a second. Fucking find that one fucking tool. There it is. Ah, Um, I'm only good at it because I've had to deal with that for so long. When you're a teacher, like female teachers, they're the worst. Teachers I've discovered are a very unique breed of people. And I'm not gonna, say all teachers are this way, but in my experience, I've had many experiences whereby I would say that a lot of teachers tend to be like very hyper. Like you kind of have to be very like someone who's really really into who just loves organizing shit, who likes like timetables and calendars and notebooks and more and more and more organizing shit, and then sort of bossing people around. There's like a certain psychology to being a teacher where you want people to listen to you. You feel, listen to me. I'm going to tell you what to do. And it's the bullshit line that teachers have to say in schools is, it's the children. I care about the children. I just love the children. Oh, the children. It's all about the children. It's about your fucking paycheck. Okay. It's about your summer vacations. You know, teachers are just, they're human beings. They don't, you know, believe me, there's, they have their favorites and the kids they don't like and this and that and stuff. Totally unnatural environment for me. Like I don't fit into that. Hello to Baldwin, welcome back. Um, I was sort of spoiled teaching art in all kinds of circumstances that were not like a state school. And people pay for the class, they want to learn art, etc., etc., and all ages too. So that's fine. But then once you get into like a state school system, it's not the same. The art teacher is at the bottom of the barrel, probably maybe lower than the gym teacher, and just above the janitor, because you're considered like a babysitter and a school decorator. You're supposed to decorate the school, and show the kids, oh look, they can copy Van Gogh's Starry Night. They understand art, and it's much much worse than that. It's much much worse than that. But here I am trying to like actually authentically teach kids real art and the whole thing, and I can remember being yelled at for that. Like, are you gonna? How long are you gonna take on this unit? Or like, blah 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 blah, blah. And what are you? What are you gonna do for Halloween? Or what kind of decorations are you gonna make for Halloween or whatever? Like, I gotta quit this job. This is some bullshit. Anyway, this girl's very surprised right here, as you can see. So Craig says my family within trying to condition me to have a high tolerance for feminine cheap shots. My sister is a big time CEO because she's a female. Yeah, that's a qualification. My dad was a liberal, no matter how much I achieve. So fuck that. God bless your family and stuff, but fuck being shat on by this kind of culture. Fuck it hard. And like there's sometimes there's just people you can't avoid. You have to deal with them. And if you have to deal with them, don't make them comfortable. Don't ever give them the frame of control. Don't ever feel intimidated around them. Be relaxed, confident, comfortable in your own skin, and you know, just don't take any shit, kind of thing. You'll find there's especially like these kind of like feminists, you know how they are. Here I'm making like a comic book about like feminists and shit. That's kind of funny. Anyway, let's move on. How was your day, guys? What'd you guys do? Splattercat, how was your day? Baldwin, how was your day? What did you guys do? I am going to continue to. I'll zoom in on this a bit and work. I found out just that right brush for this. Work stuff while having a terrible headache. Dude, why do you have a headache? What's going down? Been a busy day, yard work and all that. Okay, otherwise been great. Happy to see you streaming. I'm trying to get back to regular. I do have a couple. There's things. I have like a dinner hangout session coming up soon. I've got just stuff, life stuff. So like, but yes, I am going to get back to streaming regularly. And I spoke to a well-known figure in the dissident right who is a fairly big name. Asked him if he would like to come on the show with me regularly because what I do and what he does are related in a way. And when you see who the guy is, you'll get it. You'll be like, "Oh, interesting." So, yes, he's looking to come on at some point soonish. I did have the thought that I should reach out to Mark Collette to do a movie review because he really liked it when I came on for um, what was it, Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Um, and so I'm thinking we should do a review of Superman. It's loaded. I mean, it's perfect for our cause. Like we can talk about it. There's just loaded with symbolism and history, and there's a lot there. There's a lot to discuss. So I'm gonna try to reach out to him to get a few things in order. I don't know what his schedule is or any of that, but yeah. Um, what else can I tell you? Zog, you chasing mice? I don't understand. Could be the gums. Hold on. Um, I got a reading done. Okay. I may have even been a spot tooth. Yeah. Ouch. Wow. Yeah. Dental things are not fun. Not good. Not gonna do. Um, at the moment, I am in a little more of a stepping back a bit from like the political hot takey stuff and thinking a little more in terms of just the vibe, you know. And there's a discussion I was having with some of the members of my group, and one of the things that I brought up was the idea of being, how do I put this? Like, how do I put this? One of the friends members in my group was saying that I have a really good ability for gathering people together in this sphere. And whereas, there's a lot of different conflicting, you know, cult of personality situations going on where you've got this camp and that camp and they're fighting and all this just shit, Um, but the thing of it is that like my friend was saying it's not that you're leading anyone anywhere, but that you're gathering them together in a kind of a space that is not confrontational. Like we're not sort of fighting over talking points or who's part of what community and who's right and who's wrong on XYZ. And I thought, wow, that's cool. I think that's pretty cool. So what how I sort of perceive that is that it's kind of more of a state of being in a sense, a type of a frequency, if you will. I've been trying to explore this concept of frequency more. Archons, thoughts, Gnostic gospel items. You're way ahead of the curve there, Great White Ape, because I'm deeply into Gnosticism. Like the stuff that I have been researching for years is all culminating uh, in such a way as to show me that Gnosticism is it. Is it. Um, One of the I don't know how to I don't want to say terrifying or make it be dramatic or melodramatic about it, but there's a huge part of the UFO field that I've been, of course, studying for years that confirm a lot of the Gnostic beliefs. Um, and I'm pretty confident that these matters are gonna come to light and sort of, you know, become mainstream-ish. I mean, I don't know if they'll be accepted, but they will at least be in the zeitgeist, so to speak, where people will at least be aware of the ideas of that, etc. So, Minus and Sophia. So you're getting uh, a little ahead of the curve there on that. Like the Sophia stuff is very, very. It's going deep, and I would my thinking is more about keeping the conversation a little closer to like what is it that I can do to create a frequency, as it were, um, that will, in a sense, attract people to this cause that will resonate with other people who have the same feelings, thoughts, ideas, instincts, knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. And so the terms like frequency, what is it? How do you have a frequency? Like, what does that mean? So your frequency is the energy that you give off depending on the state of being that you are in. So if you're living in fear and anger, you give off the frequency of fear and anger. That's your vibe, and to put it in like colloquial terms, your vibe or something. So you can. when you anywhere you go, you kind of unconsciously or subconsciously feel out the frequency, or the vibe of people around you, for various reasons, if it's work or play or what the deal is. But the deeper part of that topic is how the mind um, creates such a frequency based off of systems of belief, based off of your interpretation of reality, and you create your own reality, your own experience through the vibration or the frequency that you project. So this is the hard part. That's the kind of like, how do I crack the code? How do I get out of myself? How do I expand consciousness in such a way as to be a happier person, a more fulfilled person, someone who feels that I am accomplishing my destiny, something like that. These are the points on the map, so to speak, about why would you discuss this kind of thing to begin with. Is to have a higher to live life at a higher frequency, so that more joy, more abundance, more. And I don't want to parrot like these kind of new agey type grifters and such. And I have to come up with like different language that is not new agey, but is still clearly founded or based in the quantum physics stuff and Gnosticism. So the main thing to Gnosticism is the cosmological view that Earth is a prison planet and that the body itself is a kind of prison for your soul. And that to get deeper into it, upon death, we are okay. You mentioned archons earlier. This dark spirits that take on the form of you know they could take on the form of Jesus. They could take on the form of your mother or your child or or Mohammed or whoever and whatever you believe, and then sort of walk you back into the reincarnation cycle through any number of emotional manipulations. So this is where emotion turns out to be a kind of tool of spiritual technology. Um, now you know just talking about it isn't really going to do it. You have to have a spiritual practice in life, preparing for the moment of death, so that when that comes, you're mentally, emotionally ready to face the archons and face the challenge of essentially not being recycled into this system. So, according to UFO documents um, that I've come across, there's been some question and answers with Grays about this topic, and they say that humanity has been undergoing this for 10,000 of our Earth years, and there's like a lot of this and that to that topic. It gets kind of wacky, but dark ignorant, yeah. The feeling is a worm feeling similar to alcohol, but mainly in the shoulders, but a tidal little bit throughout the body, inside and out. I totally don't know the context of that. Literally, figuratively. Let's skip. I'm gonna go back and read Baal Beelzebub. I'm so this is a working theory, meaning I continue to research things and put together information that will either work for or against the theory. And my theory is that the small hats are in league with the archons, and that creating wars and suffering and all of this is part of the entire thing. I'm not claiming that to be true. I'm saying it's a theory. Um, it gets pretty deep if you well, it's very very deep. There's like a lot of kind of arcane books on the matter. There's not a lot of sort of channels or resources to get into this. There's one that I found on, well, there's many, but sorry, I'm contradicting myself, but I'm drawing and trying to talk at the same time, and sometimes I fuck up. So what I'm trying to say is this: there's many many books on the topic, but there's not many experts on those books. Okay, and I found one recently who I was really digging into and being like, wow, this is great. So glad I found this channel, blah blah blah. And then I come to find out the guy himself isn't Jewish, but he's married to a Jewish woman who, and I did some research on her. She's got a Wikipedia, and she's like a radical. She's like a radical political Jewish activist. And I'm like, okay, here you are doing these deep dives on Gnosticism, and you're married to a radical, you know, Jew. So it's pretty obvious that you're what you're doing is some kind of, you're running interference, and you're part of something. What that is 100%, I don't quite know yet, but um and I called him out on it. He got upset, when I was trying to discuss this with him, and he was very like avoidant, like, and that's another red flag when you're trying to talk to somebody about something and they can't just give you a frank and straight answer, when they have to be like snarky and rude and not answer the question directly and stuff. That's not fucking right. That's not fucking right. And in fact, it's very newish. So you can kind of da da da. However, there's other stuff out there. Um, I don't know. It's just it's a thing. I don't go really into detail on that because I feel like most people don't like it, or they feel threatened by it, or they're uncomfortable with it in some way or other. So it's just not something I go to. I care about it. I'm interested in it, so I do talk about it, but not like just not like preaching anything or whatever. Okay, wow, that was a fabulous speech you gave there, buddy. Um, hey, buddy. So, but yeah, it's um, I think another a big part of that is the sort of UFO disclosure stuff that's coming down the line. Um, it's part and parcel with that. So when all of that information starts coming out, that's when Gnosticism is going to really become like a household word. I don't know if you guys are aware that Area 51 had a gigantic fire, and that it's understood that like the whole base is destroyed. And so insiders were saying that it was done to cover up what they're doing there, and a lot of what's sort of insiders report on that, and take this with a grain of salt, is that there's things, just some very fucked up kind of like DNA experiments, lots and lots of like UFO back engineering type stuff. Bob Lazar talks openly about this kind of thing. That's no secret. There's documentaries about that. But the darker side of it is human experimentation. Um, the mixing of human and animal DNA to create chimeras, however that's pronounced. Um, if they burn down Area 51, which is several layers deep, not layers, floors deep, then something really, really, really serious is going on. That's again, I guess the average person doesn't really know. They don't research this stuff, so they're not gonna care. But something's up. So I'm gonna have to go over to Dark Journalist X and see what he knows about it. That should be interesting. This marker is dying. All right, I gotta get another one. All right, if you'll excuse me, I have to get some stuff. I'm back. All right, let's especially before when I was a Christian, I could feel if someone is a Christian before. Oh, interesting. Okay. Jews do a lot. Blue Heart, Blue Beam. Yes, Project Blue Beam. That's a whole other thing. 5 days ago, not at base. Was 20 miles away. Is that? Oh, so you are following it? The backup fake news grifters. Hey, Symphony's here. Um. Mhm. So the report that I saw said it was the base. I don't know what report you saw. Um, it's still highly suspicious that something near the base. And I mean, if you saw the footage of the fire, it looked like it was enough fire that you'd think like there was a volcano that went off. There was like massive, massive amounts of smoke that came out of this thing. It wasn't like a little house fire or something. Um, I don't know. Who knows? Um, Gothic fire area ways away. Okay. Um, what do you guys think of Nick Fuentes? Not like 2, 3 years ago, but like right now, and what he's been up to. Get your take on that. Let's see. No, you're just saying no. Okay. Um, hmm, let's see. Chad Love is here. Wow, haven't listened to him lately, but he was brilliant before. However, Red Ice doesn't seem to like him, and they are a trusted source. Um, I need to get back to Red Ice. I haven't been watching anything from them quite a while. 20 miles, pics, videos. All right. Wow. Great. White Ape, you're on top of it. That's great. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've got a lot of different resources. When I say resources, I mean like people who are producing content, about the movement, news, all of that stuff. Um, and you find your favorites, and then you kind of just stick to that. You know what I mean? Whatever that might be. White Rabbit Radio is good. Um, of course, I like Mark Collette. even though that's obviously more like UK, but he does cover quite a lot of stuff. Um, and I didn't what little I saw of Fuentes years ago was just sort of annoying to me, so I didn't follow him. But then recently, there's just been a lot going on. I think the interview with Candace Owens was a big move forward. I think in terms of like the Overton window, that kind of thing. This page looks mostly done. I think I'll move on to another page. And anyway, then so like I started paying attention to him more and liking what I'm hearing. So that's why I'm pretty much at a place where I'm like, wow, okay, I'm definitely into this now. He doesn't seem to be that young high school snotty nosed shitlord type kid anymore. Now he's extremely knowledgeable about whatever history and politics, um, policy, all of that stuff. So I would recommend revisiting it. There's something to learn. Logos Academy as well. Tell me more about Logos Academy. What's that? What in the dickens is this Logos Academy? I know that Richard Spencer's got this thing he calls Alexandria University, and he's trying to create some kind of online university, which I think is great. That's a great thing to do. I'm always musing about ways in which we can, you know, improve. I do get impatient though. Like that's probably my worst trait as a person, is lack of patience. That's not a good frequency, guys. Not a good frequency. So why am I talking about frequency? So because frequency, the quantum physics of frequency is what you put out is what will come back to you. And in Buddhism, they call that karma. So it's, there's different words for it, depending on what your ego bias is. Well, I don't believe in this, and I believe in that. And this is who I am. Your ego is a kind of limitation on truth, and it filters truth. If you don't have it put in these particular terms, then I don't like it, and it's not real. And I'm not saying you personally, but all people, like everybody does it. The ego is the Jew of the mind. It pretends to be you, but it's not really you, and it stops you from reaching your greatest potential, which is a big problem. The entire purpose of Buddhism is to transcend and free oneself from the ego. You know, a pretty colossal thing to do. If you can get somewhat free of the ego, that's a great accomplishment. But I find, like, again, back to the frequency thing. If you stay, let's say, think of frequency as like where your mental emotional state is focused on. Think of your mind is like a flashlight, and you point the flashlight at a thing. Well, if you point it at God all day every day and literally talk to God all day every day, saying, hey, I'm not doing too good over here. I'm really pissed off about that thing. Or oh my God, I'm so grateful for the this and that in my life, and I love you, God, and blah, 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 blah. Like, there's just have a human being, like a human relationship with God. Then that's the frequency you're at. And I've discovered that it's really, really powerful, really, really powerful. Like immediate things, crazy things can happen. But also, I've I've discovered like things can go wacky too if you because you're like if I have a if while I'm in this frequency, if I think like you know what, um, I'm gonna get a call from that person who I don't want to talk to. 2 minutes later, ding, 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 ding. Oh, look who just called. You see what I'm saying? Like, I've been having these kinds of metaphysical experiences, these synchronicities. Oh, there's a nice word for you if you like Carl Jung, if that fits your ego construct, and like more and more and more. And I'm trying to figure out, well, how can I really harness this in like a really, really strong way. That would be awesome if I could. And one has the notion that like when suddenly you'll get a barrage of like really, really negative thoughts, and they could just be I don't know things that happened to you in the past, things you don't want to happen to you, or things you're afraid of. Just any number of fucking things. And if you get into a state where it's just one thing after the next, and you do have the sense that you're under a psychic attack, and it's you know how do you prove that? How can you say that you're literally under a psychic attack by demons or something? Well, you might feel it to be true. You know what I mean? But and maybe saying it changes the framework or the frequency in some far as you can be like, look, I uh, I can overcome this. These are foreign entities that are entering my mind and fucking with me. And so, I'm not perfect, but I'm going to go back to God. I'm going to go back to gratitude. You know what? I think I'm going to change the channel on the radio and try to find some like music that picks me up a bit. I'm going to think about the great things that happened last weekend and things I'm planning ahead for, and do a little itinerary of all the things I'm happy about. Da, 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 da. So whatever, the managing your own mind is it's a thing. It's a massive, massive thing. And I think this is one of the major points that is so salient, so important, so central to everything and anything in life is people learning how to manage their own thoughts. So like earlier we were talking about how do you deal with, like narcissistic sociopaths, you know, like feminists or what have you. And I don't know. I think that it's starting to kind of like lean over into stoicism and Marcus Aurelius and this kind of thinking that like the Buddhists said the same thing that like you know you can it's easier to conquer nations than it is to conquer yourself. This is kind of a paraphrase of a Buddhist saying. So it's an ongoing struggle. It's not like, yep, okay, I'm done. Boop, all done. Wee, yeah, I'm done. I'm enlightened. Haha. So I like that. But I think that the more you know this thing about frequency, about how you interact with your own mind and how that shapes your reality, it's just to know that for starters is really, really, really good and really important. And how does all this tie back into Gnosticism? So when your your soul leaves your body and you are being emotionally manipulated to go back, you will have a sense of mental emotional control, where you can say, you know what, I'm not going back, and I know that's a soul trap, and there's nothing that's going to make me go back there, and I cannot be manipulated I have like in Buddhism they call it non-attachment. Uh, Westerners hate that term because they think it means like you destroy your emotions and become emotionless, like some kind of a robot or something. And that's not at all what it means, but it's just become the popular misunderstanding of it. Um, Non-attachment is the understanding of realization of the nature of reality, whereby everything in this reality and probably beyond is impermanent. And therefore, there's nothing to attach to. There's nothing permanent that has like permanent existence in and of itself that will remain. You know, someone who you love will grow old and die and may even turn on you emotionally because they change as a person. You know, there's this I think many kinds of things of this nature. You are also, affected by this kind of natural force, and in Buddhism they're often saying things like, who is it that's doing the attaching, because they go so far as to say that you don't even exist as far as you think you do, as far as the illusion of self uh, convinces you to. Um, yeah, I could go off on a lot of Buddhist stuff, but let's check some chat and see. He's on Odyssey. Okay, Logos Academy is on Odyssey, but he's one of our guys. Very good. I need to look him up. I probably already know who that is, but it's kind of slipping my mind at the moment or something because that does sound familiar. And I haven't been on Odyssey in 1,000 years. There's a lot of good stuff there. Okay, moving on. Craig says differentiating between pride and ego is important, though. Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. Uh, I can remember having this discussion with like one of the big dogs in the movement some time back, probably through like Imperium Art or one of those shows. And this person was saying like our movement does not need like the Buddhist notion of egolessness. We need massive ego right now. We can't be teaching people to, whatever, just sort of like flake off or some kind of thing like that. And I didn't take that. How do I say? Um, for starters, I agree to the extent that this is true. We need to have a movement in which you know we are strong mentally, emotionally, physically, politically, blah blah blah. So that's fine. But I also feel like there's a sort of a misunderstanding or misinterpretation, misuse of this kind of Buddhist stuff. There's a bias against Buddhism because it's not like, from Europe or something. When in fact the Buddha had blue eyes, his family originated in Iran, and there's evidence to point out that he was Aryan. In the Buddhist text, they call him the Great Arya, which is believed to be a derivation of Aryan. So there's a whole side to that, guys, my boys. I'm not really going to go down that road. That's a deep rabbit hole, but kind of neat stuff. My personal belief is that he definitely had some kind of Scythian um, background. There's a connection to that. Anyway, going off on a tangent. You know, if you couldn't, so this is a perfect example of what I was trying to explain, is that if I were to say, okay, hey, what this movement needs is stoicism, Marcus Aurelius, everybody would sign up. Yeah, man, it's masculine, it's Roman, awesome. But if I say like, hey, but did you know that Buddhism teaches the same thing? And shut up, so it's like, well, all right, whatever, do whatever works, guys. Hopefully you can get the benefits, whatever they may be. Um, But this is kind of where I'm going is like, I asked people once, like, okay, let's say we have the ethno state, then what do we do? Like, what's next? What do we do? And it's weirdly, people were kind of dumbstruck by the question. And I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that would be like, okay, we would organize this and that, and we would do A, B, C, D. That's fine. Build better communities, take care of the elderly, education, something, 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 which is great. But what I was getting at though is that, like, I don't know how to phrase this, really, really hard to explain. I feel like what would be great for the movement is if, to some extent, we interpreted or we tried or we thought of it as a state of being. Dramatic pause. A state of being. So, we talk about the biospirit of whites. Talk about the greatness of our ancestors and such. You don't, in a sense, you don't have to do anything. You already are the thing, which is a state of being. Correct, right? It's blood. We always talk about blood and soil. Um, so I'm kind of trying to find where is the connection between this notion of the state of being to the movement, the notion of frequency control, expanded consciousness, and this movement. How can those things connect? That's what I'm kind of working on right now. So, if there's the next big thing that comes out and we can react to, like, for example, I guess, like, Zelensky has sent drone bombs to fucking Moscow and shit like that. But I'm not gonna. That's a frequency. You see what I mean? Like, when this World War III thing started and all that shit went down and the way it all went down, everybody. I mean, I think most people who were like, aware of this were like, holy fucking shit, this might really be it. This might really be it. Is this really World War III? Are we really fucking going there? I mean, in my experience with, like, the people I know, that was a genuine concern. Um, and then it turned into it's just the usual fake and gay shit, or blah blah blah, blah, the usual stuff. So I think that's always going to happen. A kind of like uh, fear frequency, if you want to call it that. I really need to use a brush, and I don't like these. These markers are only good for inorganic things, you know, like machine guns and stuff. Um, I need to get my brushes. Hang tight here. Oh, if you guys want me to stop talking about this and you think it's stupid, tell me. Oh, where the fuck is it? Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm gonna go back into the chat a bit here. Logos. Mm, Craig says, what I described earlier in the chat was the closest thing to evidence of frequency based on the mind I have ever experienced. Yes, yes, and I didn't get a chance to, like, uh, sort of acknowledge that, and I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's a knowing beyond knowing. It's more like a feeling, but it's not like a Well, I guess it could be physical. I don't know how to explain it. It's like, have you ever? I mean, I think we've all had some kind of paranormal experiences. I'd say it has that kind of vibe to it. Craig says, not that Christians are going to ever admit that it's a perversion of another belief. I know, I know. Splattercast says just probably a lazy evening. Haha. Wow. Okay. Well, there's not really any uh, response to the stuff I've been talking about, so I'm assuming you're just listening. I don't know, or you're gone. I don't know. So I this show I just like air out my thoughts. I like I just muse. Like that's what I do on these shows. It's pretty much some call it bullshit. I call it philosophy. Anyway, no, it's just musing. Yes, but it does help. I think when if you're onto something and you kind of sort of talk it out or whatever, that there's that's helpful. Craig says the difficult to explain any kind of sense. Great artwork. Oh, well, gee, thanks. I have so much better artwork out there, though. I mean, I'm not saying this is bad, but like I've in my lifetime, I've done things. I've seen worlds you people wouldn't believe. Seen fires off from Tannhauser Gate. Sorry, I just became Roy Batty from Blade Runner. Maybe I'll switch it up a little bit. Speaking of art, um, and it does kind of tie in actually with this a tiny bit. But so I way years ago, I'm back in college, and I became really interested in Zen Buddhism. I was trying to learn it as a coping mechanism to help me handle the grief of my father's death. And I ended up finding a program where I went to Japan on an exchange program for a year, and I studied Japanese traditional painting. It's called sumie, and it's just ink and brush painting. It's black and white on paper, whatever, rice paper. And the I in addition to that, I was also taking a course on Zen Buddhism. I was doing there's a word for this, I forget the name of it, but it's like a special study for art history in Buddhism in Japan, like where I visited temples and I gathered research. It's essentially the art history of a particular temple in Kyoto, a place called Sanju Sangendo. Um, if you ever look that up, you blow your mind. It's so beautiful. Anyway, but I wanted to apprehend, like, how is it that painting could be a form of meditation that could even like stimulate enlightenment to some extent within the within what I understood of Buddhism. And so there's a great history of this stuff in Japanese Buddhist art. It's quite wonderful. I'm not quite as up on like the names and things like I used to be, but anyway, and then I sort of became like I kind of wanted to be like one of these like Zen monk poet painters, you know, um, and you do it for so long with the right spirit, and you gain some level of proficiency in it. Um, According to say like a Zen like Japanese Zen poetry and painting and such, it's very much about capturing a moment that is like purely authentic. That is, because Zen itself is just absolute pure consciousness. It's total pure consciousness in the moment, unimpeded by ego. And if you can like sort of acquire that state of consciousness and then start painting, this is what the monks would do, and they would produce these just exquisite works of art that were more like, if you could imagine painting with a sword, and the ink being the blood, and they would slash out these paintings with like such amazing beauty and confidence and truth. Because it's the thing about the brush is that the brush doesn't lie. When you put the brush to paper, it will trace it, rather not trace, it will leave a trace and or show the truth of your mind at that moment. That, where are you concentrated? Are you here? You know what I'm saying? Are you fully here? And so that was a really, really beautiful endeavor that I did for years. And then I tried to bring that, excuse me, bring that over into oil painting. It doesn't really work with oil, to be quite frank with you. It's just not the same thing. Oil as a whole, it's a very Western thing. But and then I moved on to other endeavors, kung fu and this and that and stuff here and there. But the lesson from it carried on. You see, so when let's say if I'm sparring, it's to be in a frame of mind where you're fully present and that you are creatively spontaneous without ego. You that there it is, right there, is to attain a state of egolessness and then do martial arts in that state. And so when and if you can acquire that state, you are like almost unbeatable, because you just have this somewhat superhuman kind of sensibility, for lack of a better term, where you can read the opponent. Time changes, time slows down, and you're kind of doing like the dance of the cosmos, sort of. That's the feeling of it. And it's magical. It's fucking magical. That's why I ran a sparring club for 9 years, is that I was like kind of addicted to that feeling. I want to feel that feeling. And you take a lot of punches to get there. It's like, okay, I'm still warming up, you know. But once you're in the zone, oh, it's such a beautiful feeling. So that's a thing. Reading just probably lazy. It's difficult explaining great artwork. Da, da, da. Okay. Well, there's still 8 people here, so I'm not talking to myself, which is nice. It's nice to not talk to yourself when, you know. Anyway, I never understand like why people come to a stream but don't get into the chat. Like they just lurk, you know. I don't know. Maybe they don't speak English. Hmm. That's legit. Like I get a lot of people from other countries and stuff. This is coming up beautifully. One thing I love about comics is like you can really feel the motion. You can feel him pulling her and her reaction, that the glass is kind of flying off. And then using the slanted angle like that of the panel, it just creates more motion in that direction. We got some comments here. Craig says, one thing I've been studying and philosophizing is how bravery is a skill set, which repetition and practice is needed. I I think you nailed it, bro. I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. It's so let me speak to that quickly before I carry on. So one of the things I learned early on in sparring is the fear that you have of like, oh my God, there's a genuine fight or flight chemical rush, where your brain is like, shit, I'm fighting. Somebody's attacking me. I'm under physical attack here. And for lack of a better word, it's fear, right? It's some kind of fear. So it then occurred to me like, okay, there's your mission. You have to attain, acquire, stimulate a state of fear, and then stay, like, find out how to be zen inside of it. Be still inside the fear, and then sustain that as long as you can. And so, like, if you're going at it, with some other martial arts dude, and you know you're going at it, you're trying to defeat the other person. It it's it's not, doesn't take very long. There's a rapid fire of, punches and kicks and footwork, and huffing and puffing and grunting and groaning, and a thing, it happens. But if you do attain that, like I said, that kind of zen state within the fear and within that combat zone, time slows way down, and you become otherworldly, in a manner of speaking, in a sense. And it's definitely a vibration. It's very, like, it's very, very definitely a type of a frequency, if you will. So I don't know. I'm dying to get the sparring club going again. I feel like anxious to do that. Eh, it's so hard to find people that want to do that. Anyway, moving on. Craig says, just like working out, it's in your will to become stronger. You could bench 300 if you want. You can try to lift 300 before you can lift with way less. Otherwise, you'll traumatize your psyche and injure it. I think people lurking means they just like watching you draw. That's cool. Looks like you are. Wait, looks great. You are awarded. Oh, thank you, sir. Mushin. Interesting. Mushin. Yeah, there you go. So, uh, okay, that would be a cool thing to talk about. My mind is short circuiting a little bit because, like, I know the Japanese and the Chinese, and I'm trying to kind of get it right in terms of the language. Mu in Japanese is wu in Chinese, and it simply means like nothing, but it doesn't mean nothing. It means a state of Zen emptiness. So it's much more than nothing. It's a spiritual state. Um, and Shin in Chinese, and probably also in Japanese, is heart. Now, in Japanese common language, kokoro, I believe, is the word for heart. So it's not that word Shin is more of like a Chinese martial arts throwback. You got to understand, like, that the Japanese had a lot of Chinese martial arts come in through Okinawa and all that other stuff. Plus the language itself through Buddhism and things. The Kamakura period was like the renaissance of Chinese Buddhism martial arts language that really, 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 like, forged Japan as we know it in many ways. Anyway, so empty heart. Think of that, empty heart. Um, doesn't sounds like shit in English. It's like, I have an empty heart. Like, it just sounds really negative. It's not the point. That's not what we're saying here. But it is exactly the state that I was just describing to you. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Mr. Great White Ape, you, yes. Anyway, moving on. If someone is traumatized to extremely for what they are ready for and they're forced into a fight or flight response, they live their life not being able to pick their battles based on situations. So you're really tapping into something much bigger too here, because the notion of like this is a life philosophy. This is a like a life vibe, a life frequency, if you will. Um, you know, we do live in fear of a lot of things. Am I gonna pay rent? Is my mom gonna die? Is that that person gonna love me? Are they gonna leave me? Da 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 da. We're gonna have World War III. Blah, 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 there's unconscious fear, conscious fears. There's a lot. So the martial way is a way of life. It's a real, you know, it's a real way of life, and that again comes right back to this notion of frequency. What are you broadcasting to the universe? What are you broadcasting in your life? Like, are you fearful, angry, anxious? Are you that person? Are you content, at peace? Do you flow with situations? Are you organic? Are you natural? You see what I'm saying? So I feel like it would be very interesting if, in some regard, we as a movement started thinking about the frequency that we're putting out. If I would say so far, it's just a frequency of anger, fear, maybe like negativity, cynicism, black pill. Um, we're right. I mean, but that doesn't mean that we're gonna win. You see what I'm saying? Just because the truth is on our side doesn't mean that like that we're gonna win. And so this is a problem. I feel like we have to be the thing that we want, you know, and that again comes back to frequency. So this is kind of an idea that I haven't really put into words, so I'm being very clumsy in describing it on the show today, but it's a sort of a direction that I'm heading in, and so we'll see how that works. Obviously, it's largely for myself, to try to improve myself, um, and get into a more healthy state of being. Um, I still have a long way to go in things that are important to me. Um, but anyway, we'll get there, I guess. I put a little person in the window watching this up here. It's not in the script, but I just thought it would make it kind of interesting. Traumatized. Thank you for all your engagement tonight, Craig. I wish that more people lurking would get involved, but apparently not. Okay, so Craig says, rather choose fight 100% of the time or flight 100% of the time because well, that's an old adage. Is like he who knows when to fight will win. You see what I'm saying? Like that bitch that called me and gave me the passive aggressive routine at work today. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming, and I knew how she was going to handle it. And so, if I fought her, then my job could be in trouble. You know what I'm saying? I'm very. There's times to fight people. That's fine. I'm not trying to say don't. I'm not saying avoid fighting. I don't mean that. But this is a more advanced form of fighting, a fucking far more advanced fighting. This is like Buddha level fighting. And that's why like meatheads don't get it. They just think aggression, anger, you know, uh just like, you know, go crazy. black belt in crazy, like they think that's the way. And life situations, along with actual sparring fighting, they don't have to be that way. In fact, you can get a lot more when you're in that state of calm, and that's the fundamental philosophical difference between me and like a ton of other people on many different areas or fields or what have you. Um, so how I like my joke about these things is that I always say I had to tai chi that situation, or I had to judo flip that conversation. Do you get my point? So you use their energy against them to some extent. That's kind of just an analogy. Um, when you know you're heading into a conflict like that, and you have some form of reaction that is not what they expected, then especially if it's sort of positive or neutral, then you suddenly you have the element of surprise, and you're more likely to win. And it's worked wonders for me. So I'm very, very confident with that kind of approach. Um, I'll tell you an interesting story. There was a time once another job a while ago where, and this had some sales. I do some sales on this job, and I'm interacting with people doing the sales stuff. And I think I'd mentioned something or other to one of the coworkers about like, you know, people come up and you never know what kind of person you're gonna get. Like, is this person gonna be an asshole, or what kind of day are they having? Like, are they gonna attack you? You're trying to close the sale, but there's just this unpredictable side to things. And so I kind of revealed sort of my techniques for dealing with this. And this coworker surprised me a little bit, but she got a little angry and she said, "You're so manipulative." And I thought, I still think about that. Like I thought to myself, like, what I'm manipulating them into doing is not hurting me. Okay, is that manipulation? Like if these people are so stupid or whatever in terms of their behavior where it could become a harm to me, then it's defense. It's not manipulation. You see the difference? Um, I don't know. I'd have to have the exact context to have that make a little more sense to you, but still, yeah, look out for yourself. Oh God. So here's the small example. I'm at the club last week, was it? 2 weeks ago? Last week. And I think I actually mentioned this in a previous show. The This one club's in a bad neighborhood, and the club itself it's good. I've been to a million really great shows there, and it's fine. But the neighborhood sucks, and come to find out that there's like Puerto Rican gangs around there, and every once in a while they'll come into the club. I mean, the club's pretty popular. It's the joints hopping, you got the house music and this and that. And they come in, and the way that they dress and the way that they carry themselves is very, very unique and not house music. It's not at all like our culture. It's very clearly ghetto. It's very, very, it's just ghetto. I could say some bad words, and I won't say them. Anyway, and they're just, everything is about intimidation. Everything is about macho, Latin ego. There you go. It's just all Latin ego. Okay. And it's, power plays, and the women are dressed like prostitutes essentially, like really just ugh, like just horrible, very, very tacky, no sense at all of like, the I guess if you I don't know if you Google Puerto Rican gangster, if you'll see like the kind of people that I'm talking about or not. I don't know. Anyway, when that happens, it's definitely a downer. That's like, ah, shit, because that means that something could pop off. Like everyone's there. House music is about positivity. Everyone's having a good time. We're all getting along. It's nice. It's a good vibe. It's very good frequency. And then they come in with their fucking gangster frequency, and it ruins the vibe. So you got to keep your head up and open, and keep your eyes open and all blah blah blah. So I do that, and then at one point I'm kind of walking. There's that area between the bar and the wall where you want to get out, and there's not a lot of space in there. And there's this short Puerto Rican guy he's all decked out in his tacky, stupid gangster clothing, just looking like an idiot. And he's got a couple dudes and a couple girls around him. And as I'm walking by, he yells at me like really aggressively. But he didn't say anything. I would wager he doesn't speak English. So since he didn't know what to say, he just was like, "Ah!" like that, like a wild scream kind of. And someone who does that, most people would kind of stop and look to be like, "What the fuck is that?" Like, "What the fuck is that?" Like, you know what I'm saying? And I glanced very, very briefly at him and then took my eyes away towards like the direction I was walking in. And I could see by his posture, his position, the position of all the people around him that he wanted to go. He wanted to, like, this was a bait. He was baiting me, you know. And I just totally ignored it, mostly because like this person is like not I'm gonna say something very low vibe. He's like not human to me. You know what I'm saying? Like why would I pay any attention to a monkey like this? Honestly, there's no point whatsoever to interact with this monkey. And that was literally where I came from. But anyway, so I just kind of went back to doing what I was doing, didn't react at all. And he screamed again. And this time I was even more cold. Like I was literally right next to him, walking past him, like, I mean, inches away. And he like screamed in my ear. And I just kept walking and went about my business, had some fun, da da da, do do do. Good times, ha ha ha. And then by the end of the night, I'm like, oh, well, okay, end of the show. I'm gonna head home, whatever. And I noticed that as I walk out of the bar, I gotta pass by him and his gang again. So now I'm like, okay, definitely a possibility he's gonna do something. You know what I'm saying? So I will be, like my hands are up, not up like in a fighting position, but like I'm ready to go if he wants to go, kind of thing. But he was totally neutral. He didn't react to me at all. Just kind of meh. And so I won the fight. You understand what I mean? Like I won that fight. And meatheads will be like, like, nobody fucking wants violence, okay? Like I mean, you're right. But anyway, so yeah, if you can get around those things and stay calm, stay calm. Have some what's the word? Poise. Have some poise. You know what I mean? That's a like a very kind of zen state to be in, actually. You know, um, kung fu helped a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. Specifically, snake and crane. So snake and crane. are obviously animal styles. And what I was taught is that it's not just the movements that imitate the animal, but you must take on the mind of the animal. And like, what is the mind of a snake? What is the mind of a crane? Of a tiger, a dragon, da da da. And so you incorporate a type of psychology into what you do. And the thing about both the snake and the crane is that they are very still. They're very, very still and very patient and very calm, almost invisible. And then when they strike, it's like lightning, you know what I mean? And it has that kind of like devastation. So I learned a lot about that kind of poise from those styles. All right, man, I'm talking up a storm here. I gotta go to bed. I gotta work tomorrow. I'll read some chats, and then that will be that. How about how I? Oh, look at me, I'm making rhymes. Um, I should become a rapper, making rhymes. If someone is, I read that, but rather choose. I read that. Ezra Saint White is here. No time. The Japanese are pretty cool. Yes. Um, I definitely would like to go back to Japan for just a like a tourism type thing. Really lovely place. Empty mind. Empty mind. Yes. Well done. We had a term in HEMA called battle mind. It was a way to describe the mindset needed to brave your opponent's blows. Whoa, good stuff. Good stuff. That I'd like to hear more from you on that. That I'd like to hear about that. Hema Hema weaponry of knights. Medieval times broadsword, mace, morning star. Our people need to develop this battle mind. Oh god, dude. See, this is what I'm saying. That's what I mean about like getting into the kind of the world of like frequencies and stuff is to get more into the state of being that we should have, the state of mind that we should try to have as we go through our lives, you know, and to manifest a victory, you know. The Jews have Kabbalah, okay? They're masters of black magic. What do we have? I mean, we have prayer, you know, but I mean, these guys have been doing this for thousands of years. Thousands? Probably, but I could definitely say hundreds. Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, very interesting Aikido principle. Yeah, you're on top of it. I once knew a guy that did Aiki Jiu-Jitsu. It seems like such a cool style. He was a really neat dude. Um, didn't I sparred a bit with him. I would love to have sparred a lot more though. Anyway, that's too bad that didn't work out. I think he moved or something. Anyway, Craig, manipulation is not an inherently bad thing. Anytime you talk to anyone, you're engaging in manipulation in some manner. That can be very true. That can be very true. Latin ego equals machismo, correct. Did you get the stare? Yeah, kind of. You know, I mean, it was like a retarded monkey stare is what I would call it. I know I was going to use the R word, but it's so useful, you know, and I don't mean bad by it. Can I get a free pass? Anyway, I've got to find another word. I guess I'll just say idiotic or something. The criminal element are subhuman. They choose to consistently violate the social contract. Therefore, they do not belong in society. I could not agree with you more, my friend. That is everything. That is everything. We need to have our white societies back. Um, I think that, you know, people can have what do you call it? Freedom of association in like urban areas or something, but overall, though, yeah, we need that back, and that type of, if you want to call it gangsta behavior or whatever, it's in a lot of the brown cultures. Like Muslims are like that, Hispanics are like that. In my experience, Native Americans are not like that. They're I mean, they have their problems and stuff. There's high crime rates and shit, but they don't act like assholes, like black people do or like Hispanics do. You know what I'm saying? Um, and most of the crime they do to each other, which is terribly sad. But that's another topic. Um, anyway, let's move on. Violet. I don't know the context of the story of the coworker calling you manipulative, but most people who are too eager to call someone manipulative are ones too happy to manipulate other. Oh, she later I found out things about her. Yeah, like it's kind of awkward, but like she really wanted to be like my girlfriend, and I learned to care about her as a friend. We ended up becoming friends later, but there was no, like, I didn't have that vibe of like girlfriend or whatever. And I don't know, it's a lot of that kind of like women looking for a man to take care of them kind of thing. And I don't know that that's manipulation per se, but women sure as fuck know how to manipulate men. Obviously, that's a thing. It's another night's conversation. Um, Hippocratic oath, yeah, like hawks striking my rooster. Oh dear. Uh, Ezra says, did your kung fu practice have circles where you started out at circle 10 and worked down towards circle 1? So, at, in my training, it's not called that, but I would say yes. Every there's in kung fu, there's many forms of generating power. You know, there's just many types of power generation, um, and so and then strikes and various things of this nature. Some of them are very physical, and some of them involve qigong and like internal work. But the geometry of kung fu, my kung fu and most kung fu, or a lot of kung fu anyway, relies very heavily on the circle or circles, concentric circles. What's that like funnels? Like the funnels. So let's say if you're to kind of bring you're making a swishing kind of circular motion like that. I think, okay, here's a better an analogy. Imagine you've got a stick and a string on the end of the stick, and on the end of the string is a rock. And if you go, you make circles with it, eventually the string will wrap around, or the rock will wrap around the pole, right? So you can go inward or you can go outward. You can do the same motion in the opposite, and that circular motion will gain momentum as it's going wider. So, but it goes faster as it gets smaller, like water going down a drain. So those are two forms of power generation in kung fu technique that I use fluidly and frequently. they're they can fucking kill people. So like you don't goof around with that shit. Like you can break someone's spine easily, or something like that. You can throw people, several feet doing stuff like that. So it's just be careful. You got to know how to use it. But it's like a superpower. Once you know how to do it, it's like, oh my god, that's like so much better than like the mentality that most martial arts have, where it's like essentially boxing with like a gi on, um and that's not to say that like boxers aren't great or have their own power generation. They do. It's just different. So uh, I gotta finish this chat here. I should head to bed. Richard Williamson is here. Hello, Richard. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again to Victorian Time Traveler. I'm glad you're here. Correlations make something bad. correlations make something bad. I'm not sure I get the context. That is for a conversation with more time left. Okay. All right, gang. It's funny. We've got two new guys in the chat just as I'm about to shut the show down. Wah, wah, wah. But I am getting back to streaming, and we're doing. It's not a new book; it's actually an old book that I'm finishing, and we got a couple more chapters. So that's like, I don't know, maybe 64 pages or something to go on this. So you guys stick with me. Please share the link to my shows on your social media and tell people that I'm not manipulative. No. Anyway, it's great to have you guys here. I love talking with you guys. Good sense of humor, good perspective. I learn a lot from you. I think the value of these shows is totally related to how good the chats are because we have really interesting convos. You know what I'm saying? All right, Richard, come back next time. Talk soon. Have yourself a good night, guys. We'll see you next time. Keep on rocking in the free world. Thank you, Splattercat.